Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Uneducated Economist here. You know, I would like to talk a little bit about the video that I put out yesterday. The video talking about Alan Greenspan and the interview that he had, and they were talking in that interview with Alan Greenspan. They were talking about the budget deficits being more of a problem than the coronavirus. Basically, Alan Greenspan was saying that we don't know a whole lot about the coronavirus, yet we pretend that we know a lot about it. We're making monetary, he didn't say this directly, but, basically giving the idea that we're making monetary decisions on this coronavirus, even though we don't know a whole lot about it. But what we do know a whole lot about is the uh, growing deficit problems and the fact that we have a group of retiring people reaching that retirement age going to be demanding their retirement funds. Okay. And the way Alan Greenspan referred to it was entitlements. Okay. And he referred to retiring in the entitlements. Now, he never said Social Security. I said Social Security. Okay. At least in that interview. I was just assuming when he was talking about entitlements and retirement and funding that retirement, he was referring to Social Security. Now, that is my assumption, but I think it's a pretty good assumption that that's what he was referring to. And I had quite a few, I would say probably a good half a dozen emails and quite a few comments on that video, basically filled with a lot of frustration and hate. Okay? And this frustration was really understandable. I mean, if you have paid into Social Security your entire life, it would be understandable that you want that money back. Okay? I mean, you want that money. That's the whole point of Social Security, is that you paid into it so that you can get something back for it when you come into retirement age. But the problem with it is that money that you have paid in your whole life didn't go into an escrow account. It was supposed to. I mean, that's what they said it was going to happen, but that's not what happened. Okay? It got borrowed against and it got basically looted. And then now it's an unfunded liability. And now, as much as you want to argue, I paid into it, I deserve mine, you can argue that all you want. Okay? Go take a gun down to the Social Security Department, kick in the door, and demand your money. See what happens. You're going to go to jail. Now, if you look at this the way it should be, the reality of it, okay, that money is gone. And that all the people who are paying Social Security right now, see, this is a funny thing. You can go to a certain age class. If you find people who are older than me and then younger than me, I'm 44 years old. I'm smack dab right in the middle of Generation X. And if you ask the people ahead of me, above me, as far as age goes, people who are older, they look at Social Security as something that is theirs, right? It's their account. It is like almost as if they have a right to it. People who are younger than me, they look at Social Security as just another tax. It's just another tax that goes out there to do whatever they do with taxes. Okay, that's the way the mentality of the younger generation sees Social Security. They know that if they don't pay into Social Security, then the retired demographics of people would not get their paycheck. So, for lack of a better term, they look at it as like an old person tax. Like, you pay these taxes so that you can help take care of the old people. All right? And I mean, I don't mean to be offensive when I say it. It's just like that's the simplest way of describing it. At least that's the idea that less than Generation Xers, people who are under that age, that's how they look at Social Security. Okay? It's just another tax. It isn't an account that they're putting money towards. And now a lot of these people, they look at this and they say this is not an entitlement. Okay. You can look at it as though it's not an entitlement. That's cool. The only problem is that government does. Okay? Now you can call it whatever you want. But in the end, the people who are writing the checks, it's whatever they say it's going to be. All right? I don't put my faith in the government. I don't expect any of their promises. If they say, "Well, we promise we're going to do this for you." Okay. If you say so. When we get there, if it's, if there's Social Security for me when I get there, so be it. Cool. If not, I wasn't expecting it anyway, because expecting it would mean trusting that the government is actually going to do what they say. I'm not going to do it. Me personally. You can. I don't. Because pretty much anything that the government does is either taking away from you or trying to provide you with a privilege. That's the only thing that government can do. They can either take from you or attempt to provide you with a privilege. That's it. They don't grant you rights. See, a lot of people look at this and say, I have a right to this, that, and the other thing. No, you don't. You don't have, the government and rights are completely separated from each other. They do not have anything to do with each other. A lot of people don't realize that. They think the government grants you the right to do something. If you say those words, the government grants you the right, you have no idea what rights are about. Government cannot grant you a right. A right is something that you have regardless of government. Okay? There is a major difference there. And if government is going to provide anything, it's going to be a privilege. There is no right that comes from government. I see it out there. I see it regularly. I see people saying, I have a right. This is my right. They have no clue. You ask them, what's the 10 Amendments? What's the first 10 Amendments to the Constitution? Can you please spit that out for me? And they might be able to get you 2 or 3 of them. They have no clue of what their rights are. They don't know the Bill of Rights. See, if you don't know the first 10 Amendments to the Constitution right now, you don't have to memorize them. You just have to know what they are. Freedom of speech, right to bear arms, the right not to have to quarter troops lest during a time of war. The Fourth Amendment, if there was one that you were going to memorize, if you were going to memorize any of the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, memorize the Fourth. It is by far the most important one to know verbatim. The Fourth Amendment, the rights of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects from unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, particularly describing the places to be searched and the persons and things to be seized. Show me the warrant. That is by far the most powerful part of the Constitution. That separates you from government. That says you do not have a right to violate me or my personal stuff. And if you can't do that, and if you don't know that right, then you don't have it. There's no little guy who's going to jump out and say, hey, you know what? I think your rights might be violated right here. If you do not stand up for them at the time that they are being violated, then you don't have them. They're gone. They don't exist. And you can't go back after the fact and say, hey, I need my rights back. The Fifth Amendment, due process, right have to not to incriminate yourself. The Sixth is the rights of the accused in a civil case. I'm sorry, in a criminal case. Seventh is the rights of the accused in a civil case. Eighth is cruel and unusual punishment. The ninth is kind of an odd one because it basically says that there is rights that are not enumerated inside of the Constitution, and yet you still have those rights. If everybody else has these rights, so do you. Can't be used against you. The 10th Amendment, this is what gives states powers. See, the government was allotted a certain amount of powers within the Constitution. Everything else was left to the state and to the people. And if the state didn't have it, then it was left to the people to decide. And a lot of people think federal law is the overall. No. 10th Amendment says that if the Constitution does not give the government the exact power within it, then it doesn't belong to them. And they can't do anything about it. They're not supposed to, but they do it. That's very important stuff to know. Okay? So once you learn that, now you can learn the difference between privileges and rights. You have a right to bear arms. You have a right to bear it. You're in the United States, you have a right to possess this firearm. But when you're here in Astoria and you have a sidearm, open carrying, if that thing is loaded, you're breaking the law. See, it's not a violation of the Constitution. You can legally carry that open firearm. You just can't carry it loaded. See, I learned the laws about it. City Ordinance 5.010 clearly dictates that the open carry of a loaded firearm is strictly forbidden. And if a police officer does come and approach you because you have that open firearm, open carrying, then you have to give that firearm to the law enforcement so they can inspect it to make sure that it is not loaded. And if you don't do that, if you don't hand over your firearm, you'll be in violation. Once law enforcement inspects your firearm, you're free to go. You don't have to give up your identity. You don't have to do anything else. But they do get to inspect it to make sure that it's not loaded. Okay? So tell me, how much rights do you think you have to carry an open firearm inside of the Astoria city limits? Do you want to take that right? Is it worth it to you? Any right worth having is worth fighting for. And you have to know what they are. See, I don't want to identify myself to anybody for any reason, especially law enforcement. I'm friends with law enforcement. I'm friends with the chief of police here. He knows me by name. He comes into the store all the time. In fact, I think he seeks me out to help him because I'm a nice guy and he's a nice guy and we get along great. I don't have any problems with law enforcement. But if somebody in law enforcement wants to approach me and ask me my name and what I'm doing here and all that other stuff, my first question is going to be what law am I committing that is broken? Am I breaking a law? About to break a law? These are the things that you have to ask the police officers. And if they keep pursuing questions, you don't have to answer them. In fact, I forget what Supreme Court justice it was. I should look it up and put it down in the description for you guys. There was a Supreme Court justice out there who said, never under any circumstances should you ever say anything to the police. Isn't that something? Silence is golden. Anything you say can and will be used against you. The difference between rights and privileges. I don't want to be put in a situation where I have to defend my rights. When I come up to the corner, unless the sign says that I can cross the street, I don't cross the street. I don't break the law because I don't want to have to defend myself. I don't want to have to defend myself from police officers or judges or anybody else. So I walk a clean and narrow path. And I know my rights. And I know when rights are being violated. And I recognize them. Everything is about privileges out there. If it's from the government, it's a privilege. And I don't care how much they promised or what you believe that is due to you, whether it's a right or entitlement. If it comes from the government, it's a privilege. And sometimes it's not worth it. It's not worth having that privilege. I know I kind of went off here a little bit for you guys, but I think it's real important that when you're out there and you're demanding from the government, if you're waiting for somebody to elect that's going to come down from the heavens and save all you're mistaken. Okay? I don't bring politics and I don't bring religion into this channel. Okay? I don't talk about these two things. They're too sensitive and too separated for the people to try and discuss. But I do know that if you're anticipating that somebody out there can be voted for that's going to change your life and make it better, you're wrong. There's nobody out there who is going to make anything about your life any better except for you. You're the only one. Because nobody else cares. They might say they care. They don't. So do that, guys. If you're going to ever do anything and commit it to memory, Memorize the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. It's well worth it. I promise you. Uneducated Economist, you guys let me know.